What drives your passion for doing art? Today, our director and visual development artist Cynthia Halley shares his experiences working in the animation industry. She talks about how to approach networking, the pivotal role of mentors, and what's it like working for some widely different shows, including Marvel's What If?, Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Nico and the Sword of Light, and The Venture Bros. Hi, I'm screenwriter Pietro Schito, and welcome to another Schoolism interview, hosted by the great Bobby Chu and presented by Write for Animation, my YouTube channel that makes you a better storyteller. Before listening to Cynthia, here's a preview of one of the many amazing courses you can access by subscribing to Schoolism. I hope you enjoy it.
Hi, my name is Kristen Garland, and welcome to Visual Development for Television Animation. I've been working in animation for a number of years now, and I've gotten to work on some incredible series, including She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, The Midnight Gospel, and the Emmy Award-winning Nico and the Sword of Light. Visual development is a pretty broad term that covers a number of disciplines, so for this class, we're going to be breaking all of those down into a series of introductory lessons. We're going to be covering character design, prop design, background paint, and color design. Sounds like a lot, but I promise we'll get through this together. I'll go over the basics of shape language, perspective, character turns, and color theory, all of which are integral to creating a strong foundation. I'll even show you how to ink your designs and create your own brushes. Visual development isn't just about draftsmanship, though. Storytelling is also a key component. Because of this, I'll be showing you how to take a story and flesh out an entire world, all the way from rough concepts to finalized pieces that are fit for animation. So feel free to watch the entire 9-week course, or sign up for the Premier subscription class where I can provide feedback for you and your assignments. Storytelling and drawing are two of my passions, so I'm really excited to share my knowledge and experience about visual development with all of you. Hopefully it'll be helpful to you on your artistic journey. So, see you soon on schoolism.com.
All right. Hi, Cynthia. How's it going?
Hi, Bobby. It's good. How are you?
Great. I think the last time we met, it was like actually on the street or something. We were both getting coffee and we are like pointing at each other like Spider-Man and then going, oh, right? That was the last time?
Yeah, it was a number of months ago. It was, I think you were actually, you're out here in California, Studio City. So that was fun.
Do you remember if What If came out at that point or not?
Yes, it had come out. Sort of just barely, I think. It was the first season, because that was after that Paul and Christina and I did our first panel with you for Lightbox. So that was, I think that might even have been why you were still in town. It was right around that same time.
Right. So some of us, that I've interviewed and spoken to have lived really far away, far enough for us to feel like there's no options to do that.
Yeah.
Did you experience that at all, or?
Absolutely. Yeah, so San Luis Obispo is not even actually the town that I grew up in. That's the county I grew up in. I grew up in Los Osos, which nobody's ever heard of, and it is a very, very small town. It's mainly agricultural, and Cal Polytechnic School is up there as well. So it's a lot of college, and it's a lot of agriculture, and it's a lot of surfers, and it's a lot of retired people. So it's a very beautiful, nice area, but there is no entertainment scene whatsoever. And something that I tell people now who are trying to get into the industry is they have this wonderful thing called the internet, which I did not have. At the time that I was growing up looking at colleges and how to get into the industry, there was not the internet. There was not the resources, the online schools and everything that we have now. So I think people are automatically already in a much better place to at least start learning this stuff and finding out, who to ask questions of. Whereas I felt extremely isolated and to the point where I didn't even know what it was that I was trying to do, really. I just had this feeling inside that I had to try and follow. So that led me to ArtCenter College of Design eventually. I started in the illustration program and eventually found my way to the entertainment program almost by accident. So yeah, I definitely understand people feeling like they're too far away, there's no way in, but there's always a way in. There's always options, there's always opportunities, and you just have to be, persistent and really mean it.
How many years was that for you at ArtCenter?
I spent 4 years at ArtCenter. I took every possible break that I could. I had, terms off and extensions and all of that, and, sprinkled throughout. So all told, it was 4 years. And I spent 3 years in community college before that, just getting as much general ed and basics as I could out of the way.
I would love to actually ask about like your experience at ArtCenter, because as you may have heard, ArtCenter has a reputation of being a very tough, very, very competitive school. And of course, everybody has their own experiences. But what was your experience like?
My experience at ArtCenter, it was very tough, and something that I would tell. So I actually go back to ArtCenter every term, and I do a talk for one of the teachers. His name is Jim Hyman. And every term he has his students gather in, and I'll go and just speak to them pretty much exactly about what I'm talking to you about now. And one of the things that I always tell them is that the worst thing that's ever happened to you will probably happen to you while you're at ArtCenter. Almost guaranteed. It's something about, the age that we all are in college, the amount of stress that we're under. It's a perfect storm. And for me, it was a number of extremely difficult life circumstances that all came together at the same time. Way too much of a downer to talk about right now. But I also think it's important to tell people that almost everyone I knew really went through something serious. And
like school related, or something totally different, or everything?
Yeah, usually something outside of school. So, for me, it was family related. I had basically a tragedy happen in my family, and other people I knew, they were having problems with they were foreign students, and they had issues with either family back home or something about why they were able to stay or not. It runs the gamut. It's really just, whatever your biggest fears are, they may in fact happen while you're at ArtCenter. And I don't think that's kind of a joke, because it's really not ArtCenter's fault. It has nothing to do with, what ArtCenter is. But the real thing there, I think, is just that ArtCenter kind of makes you grow up. It really is. It really is a test to see, who's serious about doing this and who's not, because the attrition rate is not great. I think it's actually been getting better. ArtCenter has also been going through a major shift in just how they're conducting their programs and the teachers they have, and schools are always changing, so that's part of it. But my experience really was, I think, softer than what it had been for people in the past. So like I said, schools are changing, and things had already shifted for my class a bit. But it was definitely the hardest thing I'd ever done to that point. Since I've had more things, but it really was taxing. It was very important to learn how to take care of yourself, which, at that age, I was 21, and there are plenty of people who go there who are, 17, 18. And at that age, I think it's really unusual for people to really know how to take care of themselves mentally and physically, not just, are you feeding yourself in the morning, but are you taking the time to decompress from stress? Are you not overworking yourself and things like that? I think ArtCenter does really have an accurate reputation for forcing people to overwork themselves. It's almost impossible not to do. But it's, in a way, it's kind of a good thing, because it forges an attitude of, I really want to do this. I'm serious about doing it. And eventually you recover, a year or two out of school, you've you're young, so you kind of bounced back and you're ready to take on the world again. So I think it really does have something special in terms of training people and especially technical training. There's not a lot of schools that really dive into the actual skills behind image making. But that's also, that's really not including online schools. No, this is brick and mortar schools. And when I was going here, there was barely even online schools existing. So
Wow.
that becomes a whole new, topic when you want to talk about other schools and, schoolism and all these things. So.
Right. I heard schoolism's pretty good, but I digress. What happened after you graduated? Was it a rocket ship straight to superstardom, or was it a windy path?
It was a windy path, and I think even the people, it appears that they were a rocket ship. They had their own, they've had their own trials and tribulations along the way. No, for me, it was my first job, my first gig, if you will, out of ArtCenter was an internship at Disney Interactive, which, for some context, doesn't even exist anymore. That's a division of Disney that was their smallest, least earning, least recognized, least important division. And it was for me, it was a choice between that internship and an internship at a company that did a very small company that did advertising work for a theme park design. And I really didn't actually want to take the Disney Interactive because I felt like, down with the man. I don't want to be, I don't want to sell my soul. All that had these, very noble intentions. And everyone that I knew said, "Are you crazy? Take the Disney internship because that will open doors." I really didn't want to. I did anyway. It was not a good experience, and that's not because of Disney. It was a particular manager that made life a little bit difficult, but it really did open doors. It was from that point that I felt like if I applied to anything, people at least took me fairly seriously because I had something with Disney. But I think the biggest thing that really helped me and got me on my way was actually a friend that I met through ArtCenter. And he basically got me into Sony animation. That was my first real job outside of the internship. And it was, it was basically grunt work. It was the smallest of things that I could be working on. It was not an exciting, big, fancy show. It was just, a job there. But it got me in, and I was doing visual development, and it was pretty great there because I got to meet, Marcelo Vignali. I was working with him. I met Noel Toyo, who did production design for Hotel T. There was just a lot of great characters that I met there. But I will go back for a second and just mention that this friend that I had met through ArtCenter was a friend of one of my teachers. His name's Tony Ceruno, and he came in as a guest speaker and showed his portfolio and talked to us. And he was just so friendly, and he was so eager to help everyone, and engaged and fun and interesting and goofy. And he invited a bunch of us out to lunch. Basically, "Hey, we're running out of class time. Whoever wants to come with me, I'm hungry. I'm gonna go get lunch. Whoever wants to can come with me, and we'll talk some more." So we did, and it was probably about 5 or 6 of us, and it was great. And afterward, I just said, "Hey, Tony, this has been really great. I'd love to actually get more, from this. Is there, would you consider going to coffee or lunch with just me sometime? And I'll bring my stuff and we can talk about it." And he said, "Absolutely, no problem. Hey, here's my Facebook stuff. Find me on there. Instagram, I don't think even existed yet." Like, all this stuff. And he was just so open and so relaxed about it. And through that, it became an invitation to go down and get a tour of Sony Animation in Culver City. So I was like, absolutely, of course I'm going to say yes to that. So it just kind of, it went from there. I was willing to ask if he could do this with me. He said yes. he invited me then down to Sony. I went down there, met the whole team at Sony, probably 15, 20 people down there. And it was just so nice. Everybody was very relaxed, very comfortable, happy. And I was invited down again, a few months later. So it wound up being the last year or two of my college years. And also while I was in the internship, I had the opportunity to go down and visit basically friends at Sony every, 6 months or so is about how often. And then, so by the time that I finished my internship at Disney, they said, hey, if you're free, we have a spot, come and join us. And at that point, it was basically, they were hiring someone they already knew. It wasn't even, I think there was an interview, but it was just another lunch. It really wasn't anything official. So the reason I tell that story is because a lot of people don't really realize how important, frankly, just networking is. But networking doesn't have to be this big, slimy, icky thing. It's just, if you meet someone that you connect with, that you like, that you respect their work, and you're interested in learning from them, and you feel like they have something to offer, all you have to do is ask. It never hurts to ask, to say, hey, can is there any chance you'd be willing to look at my portfolio over lunch sometime? And everybody's busy, but there's bound to be someone who will say, yeah, absolutely. Or they'll do it online or something like that. So I always tell that to people, because a lot of people just really think that they're going to get in somebody's way, or they're going to be, it's going to be rude somehow or inappropriate. It's really not. You just have to do it. You just have to ask, and you don't know where it's going to lead. So that was my big sort of in the industry. But after Sony Animation, I completely floundered. So they went back into writing several times and wound up laying off half the crew, and I was one of them. So
this is back like around what year?
I want to say 2015. 14.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember. There was a lot of starting projects at that time, and not finishing projects.
Yeah, so I was only with them for a couple of months, and then they let me go, and they're like, oh, we really didn't want to let you go, but we had to. So 4 months later, they brought me back on, and then let me go again after 2 months. And I was like, okay, that's it. I'm good. I'm done. I don't want to be, jerked around at Sony anymore. So after that, though, I went for about 6 months with absolutely nothing. And that was absolutely terrifying, student loans and everything to deal with. And I just had nothing. But that's also when I started working in TV. So I had not been interested in working in TV. I was terrified of it. I was hearing, horror stories of how fast paced it was and all kinds of things. But I needed a job. So I took my first job in TV, which was working on season 7 of Venture Brothers. And that wound up being fantastic. I enjoyed it so much. And it turned out that I was actually happier in TV. Because of the fast pace, it wound up working really, really well for me. And after that, that was a successful stint on that show. So they kept me around to work on Nico and the Sort of Light. And I suppose you could say the rest is history. It just went on from project to project at that point. And then, from there, I started knowing enough people where I could get, recommended through word of mouth, through friends even, as opposed to strictly having to, put out applications and find jobs and things like that.
Now, I'd love to go back to the 6-month part, because, you kind of said that so quick, but that must have felt like years for you, well, number one thing that I will tell newer artists is, no matter what the state of the industry is, live modestly for at least the first bunch of years of your life, because then you can develop a cushion in case anything happens that's out of your control.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's most people, not everybody, some people are extremely fortunate, but most people will have some amount of student loans. And I had massive student loans. So it was really a lot of pressure. And I think, what you're saying there is so important. It's like, well, you're a kid still. You're just barely not even a student anymore. And it's like, do finances really matter? What do I do with that? Some people are going to be more financially literate than others. I was not at all. So I really had to learn quick and kind of the hard way how to manage my livelihood, how to manage the times when I wasn't going to have any work. But also I think that initial layoff where I was taken from Sony and then, left on my own and then put back in and taken out again, that was a little bit of trial by fire for me. And I learned, at that moment, very quickly over the course of just a few months that this industry in that way is not very stable. That will turn a lot of people away, I think, but I also think that it shouldn't necessarily turn people away. That I think as long as you're kind of mentally prepared for that and just say, it just means you have to have, more than one iron in the fire. You have to be, willing to work on, maybe not the most exciting projects, not the highest position or the highest paid position sometimes. But honestly, I think all of that is really good for people. It's certainly been really good for me. It provides interest. It provides a breadth of experience. And particularly when you're younger or fresher out of school, the more experience you have, the better. The more projects you work on, the better. As artists, we have sort of a unique thing, and I suppose most, any extremely creative field might be this way, but our work is our life very often. What we are passionate about is why we're working on it. And there's not a lot of fields that really are that way. I think, like I said, anything incredibly creative will certainly be, but it's really easy to take advantage of artists because of that. And it's really easy for us to fall into, really only ever working and thinking that, if I'm just working and I'm working on my passion, then everything's good. But that's not necessarily the case. You still have to sort of keep a monitor, like you said, on your mental health. And it's like, that's like such an adult phrase. It almost feels like gross almost to say it in a way, because, when I was a kid, when I'm fresh out of school, I don't care about the phrase mental health. What does that mean? That sounds like something that, old people worry about kind of thing, but it's really not. And, the more I go through experiencing difficult things in life or difficult things at work, it's like, oh my God, mental health is more important than anything else. That it really is the crux of everything. And I think as artists, we notoriously struggle with it. And I think it's because we are so invested in our passions, in our, creative endeavors and our need to do this, because most of us need to do it. We can't not do it. That it's easy to let that fall into, well, now it's just my job and now I just do it all the time. And I think it's easy to wind up losing your joy of it and kind of forgetting why you got into it in the first place. Because you're tired, because you're worn out, you've been overworked or you're overworking yourself, and the ability to kind of step back and say, okay, what do I need to do, for myself to sort of just maintain a certain energy, to be a certain level of happiness, or if you've had some kind of trauma in your life, what do I need to do to move past that, to overcome that? What is it that I need in my life outside of art that's going to keep me happy and healthy? I think all of those things are so tremendously important. And,
what's the thing that, when you think about mental health and stress on your mental health, what is it about the job or your life or whatever that kind of comes to mind in the forefront?
That was a two-part question. The first part is, I do certainly believe that it can be taught, but I don't believe that it's 100% teaching. It's like, you can have a class in color theory, but until you're really doing it and you're really, operating on it, you won't fully understand it, and you certainly won't find your own voice in it. You won't find exactly what works for you when you're painting until you've really had the experience doing it. As far as what comes to mind it's interesting. I have to say it's probably been different at every job, because every job has a different set of factors that are influencing me. So, for example, one of the things that was most difficult was dealing with upper management. So my immediate team, my peers, my coworkers were undeniably one of the best crews that I've ever worked with. Christina Bardasarian, Ryan Magno, Paul Lasaine, and everyone that we had working under us in our team was just absolutely phenomenal. It was much, much higher upper management and company culture that I really struggled with. And it was very subtle at first, but it was kind of like something that just worked its way sort of into my subconscious almost, that I felt by the time that I left. I realized that I had been sort of gradually beaten down to believe that either we weren't doing enough work, or that the work wasn't good enough, or that it was my fault that it wasn't good enough, or that I wasn't, basically just that we weren't doing what we were supposed to be doing at a high enough level, which, looking back is absolutely ridiculous, because we were killing ourselves to do it. And we were really, really proud of the work that we did. And we were working under extreme circumstances a lot of the time.
Well, if I could just interrupt for a second here and like toot your horn a little bit, people that saw What If, we know how much work went into that. There were new characters every episode, not one, not two, like there are tons of new characters every episode, especially the last, one was absolute chaos. It was crazy. And new locations every episode, and tons of them. It didn't, like, if you're going to make a TV show, that's the one that you say, no, that's way too much work.
Yeah. This was their first foray into animation. And frankly, they had no idea what they were getting into. So they honestly, they bit off so much more than any of us could chew. And we basically were just doing our best the whole time to keep up with it, to try and make it happen. But that also, I think, is a really good example of one of the stresses that can creep up on you, because in a way we did it to ourselves. In a way we were so ambitious that, when they said, hey, can you do this? We said, we'll try. We don't know if we can do it, but we'll try. And we tried so hard that we actually did it. But that wasn't sustainable. That was something that we could maintain for a few months. And the thing that people need to realize about especially large studios is that if it works, that's what they'll keep doing. So we made it work, and they're like, great, we're doing it. But
for the whole season.
We're dead. It's like, but we have nothing left. And then we kept going. So we exhausted ourselves. We used up our reservoirs in the first 6 months to a year, and the show kept going. Like I said, I was on it for almost 4 years, and it's still going right now. So it's going to be 5+ years by the time that the whole thing is totally finished. And we were out of energy in the first 6 months. So it's just, what are you running on at that point? It's fumes, it's adrenaline, it's, sleepless nights, it's unhappy home lives, it's everything. It's all the things that you hear people grumbling about in their lives. You think, gosh, as an artist, I don't have to deal with that. Not true. You may actually have to deal with that more than any other field, because you're passionate about what you're doing. So I think that's a real danger. The only advice I can give on that is to sort of, you're running a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's always going to be a marathon. It's always going to be meter yourself, learn what your limits are, and and learn to say no, learn to hold back and say, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not working late or whatever it is. So.
Totally. You mentioned Paul Lasaine, my good buddy Paul. Amazing, incredible artist, master level. Been in the game for quite a while. Been around the block from when Weta was starting off, Lord of the Rings, to DreamWorks starting off, to Leica starting off. This dude has been there as a key piece every time, and he's still going super strong as a veteran. What is something that whether he actually taught it to you or you kind of learned it from watching him, what were some of like the really good things that you kind of took away?
One of the best things I actually learned before I'd ever even worked with them, and working with him just proved it. It was a panel that he had done. I don't remember where it was. Anyway, it was Paul and a number of his crewmates on one of his shows. And they were doing a panel. I was in the audience. And my question to them was, how do you manage your team emotionally in terms of keeping them motivated and excited and healthy and happy while dealing with everything else, because obviously, as art directors, as directors, as managers, you're in the middle. You've got your team that you're guiding and looking after, and then you've got management. You've got, executives and accountants and production who all have different needs from you, and you're going to learn about things that are really stressful. You're going to learn about the budget. You're going to learn about how much time you don't have on this thing. You're going to learn about people that you have to lay off, these types of real company stresses that you have to deal with as a manager. How do you keep that from your crew, or do you? What's the balance,
What an intense question you asked as starting your career after a year or something.
I was a little more succinct. It was maybe just a couple sentences or two, but that was the gist of it. I earned $1 for that question. In the beginning, they had said, okay, whoever has the best question of the night gets $1. But no, it was Paul who answered it. And I don't remember his exact words, but it was along the lines of, you have to care about your crew, and you have to be a judge of how much to let through to them. It comes partly with experience, learning what artists need to know and what they don't. But his personal philosophy was really to be as open as possible without giving them any information that they didn't need. And I felt that was really key. And I've seen it so many times. We were working together. There were so many instances where some kind of problem, some issue, either at the company or with the show, or maybe with a personality somewhere, that was going to eventually directly affect all of our artists, be it in, we have to work overtime, or we're going to have to let people go, or whatever it was. It was eventually going to get back to the artists. And, Paul, basically, I saw him struggle with it every time to figure out just the right way to do it. But in the end, he always defaulted to the artists need to know what they need to know in order to take care of themselves. And I really, really respected that. That was huge, I think, in my training as an art director, learning that from him. And that's an impulse that I think we all want to follow, but I've found it very admirable how much thought went into it on his part, deciphering, what is it that they need to know versus, how much do they not need to know? And then he never complained to anyone, below him. He never, never put it on anyone else what the tough stuff was that we were dealing with. He would explain it in a way to the crew that said, hey, we've got some stuff going on. We just want to let you know, the next, couple months are going to be pretty tough. This, and this is happening. And he would even call people, individually if it was a really tricky situation, and he would talk to them very personally about something and say, whether it was a problem that we were having with that particular artist, or if it was just, essentially a warning of something that was coming with the company, something like that. And, it's tricky because we're not just employees. We are friends. We are mentors. We are, we're a very, very close-knit team a lot of the times on these projects. And it can be very difficult and potentially dangerous to go against what the company asks you to do, or even potentially requires you to do in your contracts. Like, you cannot say this such a thing. And sometimes as an artist or as a leader, it feels so morally wrong to do what the company is asking. And so it's always a fight to say, what is it that I can do that's not going to go against my moral code, that isn't going to, lose me my job, or is it worth losing my job over? That's the question too. So I saw Paul struggling and, winning, really. He took such personal interest and care with all of his team that, I've rarely seen that. And I've seen it in a few people additionally to that, but there are people like that out there. And I think it's pretty life-changing when you run into one of them and you have a chance to really work with them or study with them. And it's, it's something that I want to be good at and that I want to pass on to other people as well. So that would be the biggest thing.
Fantastic. One of the results of people like that I've experienced, I'm pretty sure it's universal, is that they leave such, like, many people cross our paths. Those are the ones that leave footprints, deep footprints, right? 20 years later, you still think of them fondly, especially when you're going through hard times. Those are the people that you really need in those times.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is, with every, I don't know, hopefully this is a silver lining for you, but like with every great show, you watch the documentary, the behind the scenes kind of stuff, and it's chaotic, it's crazy, oh my God, it almost never made it, that kind of thing. And then you have whatever, Game of Thrones or whatever it might be, right? And so, is that a sign that you're working on something good? Maybe. But it also, like, those kind of experiences, correct me if I'm wrong and tell me your own version, but it creates such tight bonds. It's almost like going through war with people.
That's exactly what
right?
I was going to say. Yeah. No, absolutely. I think very often on, if not always, on every, project I've ever heard of that was a real tough thing to get through, you wind up with best friends, like just friends for life that, you went through the trenches together. You experienced the worst of the worst, and you had these people around you. And even when you're different or sometimes difficult, it's just like, I got you. The people who are there, who went through it with you or who helped you out of it. And there's nothing else like it.
Now, the other thing that we talked about earlier was it's kind of normal to be on a project for less than a year, and then you're on to something else, and then another thing. Each time you're with a different team, right? Each time you're building relationships. And through it all, time keeps passing. And as time keeps passing, it is generally harder to kind of stay close with your friends.
Yeah.
Do you, or like, that's something that's always been really important to me, is my friends, and like keeping in touch and everything, but it's definitely been much more of a conscious effort to do that. How do you keep in touch with all these people that you've crossed paths with?
Well, one thing I would say is I think everybody gets it. We're all kind of doing the same thing of, all right, I'm on to a new project now, and it might be a couple years before I see you again, kind of thing. And what I've found is that when I do get back in touch with people, everybody's just like, oh my God, how's it been? And it's like no time passed at all. So in that sense, it's a bit of a relief. It's been easier than I expected. So in that sense, it hasn't been difficult, but it also, it does require effort. It does require, I kind of have almost a running list of all the people I've ever met that I enjoyed hanging with. And it's a subconscious thing. It's just in my head somewhere. And I sort of let it cycle. So it's like, there's the people that I met when I was at Sony. There's the people that I met with Venture Brothers. And, there was a time I didn't see some of those people for probably almost 8 years or something like that. And suddenly I'll realize, oh my gosh, has it been 8 years? I should message them. And so I'll just message them, I'll text them or I'll send them an email and I'll just say, hey, it's been a while. I was just thinking of you. How are you doing? And that's it. I just a month ago, I did that with someone that I had worked with at Sony and had not spoken to since the last time I worked with. But I remember I really liked them and we got along. So I just messaged them and now we're having lunch this Friday. So it's like, everybody is kind of in that same boat. And I think I'm definitely one of those people that instigates things. So I'm always the person saying like, hey, remember me? Or like, hey, you want to go do something? I'm always getting other people to go out and do things with me. But I think everybody has someone like that in their life, or maybe they are that person.
I'm totally that person as well, as you could probably imagine.
It does take effort, but it's an effort that I'm happy to do. But also I think it's normal to have people come into your life and have people kind of leave your life, either, maybe forever, but maybe just for a few months or a couple of years. And generally it's a small industry, so people tend to sort of circle back around. I do think also it's important just in terms of networking. And again, I think a lot of people have kind of a negative view or like a negative connotation to networking, that it feels, not genuine or something like that. But for me, networking really is just keeping in touch with the people that I like. There's a lot of people that I worked well with that I thought were cool that, maybe we didn't become best friends and keep in touch forever. We're not pen pals, but they were fine. They were cool, And so every once in a while I'll just say, I should reach out to some of the people I know and just see how they're doing. And what that does is it not only makes me feel good and like there's other humans out there that I can just talk to, but it's also just a good way of keeping your finger on the pulse of the industry.
Now your art, we were talking a little bit about this before the interview. It doesn't, like, the portfolio doesn't have that much color. It's very, very strong in perspective and layouts. If you think back to like what perhaps put you on this path, what inspired you to really delve in and focus in on those kind of things, or what boxed you in, perhaps, what would that be?
Well, first of all, I do love that kind of work best. So you're talking about, layout and perspective and tonal work and line work, things like that. That has always been my number one draw to any kind of art. I am obsessed with Mike Mignola and just ink work, black massing and really punchy, graphic, strong contrast images and things like that. And I've just always loved drawing and line work much more than I've loved painting. I love color. I love seeing what it can do. I love, fully fleshing something out. But for my personal work, I've found that usually I'm satisfied after black and white. After I get, some like this image here, I don't feel the need to color that personally. I like it the way it is. I'm happy. I like black and white movies. But I do also, I do like to push myself, and I do sometimes just really want to see color in something. And the main thing that has kept me from doing that professionally is, really just the fact that I have excelled at this kind of work. So it's kind of my own doing, that my intense focus on really nailing, tonal, line work, those types of applications, and especially perspective. Not everyone is really, really strong in those areas. Other people are going to be very strong in color and things like that. And it's not that I've not wanted to do color or that I can't do it or don't enjoy it. It comes down to who is available to do what on a production. And as it turns out, more people are good at color than they are at something like perspective or really strong value setups. And something that a lot of people don't realize about TV, especially if they're just coming into it, is that in TV, the value setup, the layout, and the drawing happens entirely separately from the paint. Paint comes after that. So you have your value system completely set up. Your design, your shape language, everything is set up in the layout stage. And then the paint comes, and those people are going to be experts at, colorizing things and getting the brush strokes and hitting the style and all that kind of thing. And, like I said, as it turns out, there's a lot of people who are really good at that and not a lot of people who are really good at perspective or designing shape language. And that happens to be one of my specialties, if you will. So it's great and it's fun because I love doing that's my favorite thing to do. But it does make me sad because I don't get to do color very often. That's something that I've been really working at lately, is to try and find opportunities to start playing with that stuff. I've been, making time for more studies on my own. I was just going through years worth of past artwork a couple days ago, and I discovered all of these projects that, abandoned things that I'd completely forgotten about. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to paint this so bad. It's like I finished the tonal years ago, and now that I'm seeing it, it's fresh for me. And now I'm excited to jump back in and, put some just awesome color on some of this stuff. So all these things that are showing up now, these are all for, for shows that I was on. So this is the professional layout, background design work. And I probably won't be interested in touching any of that for another 5 years at least, because I remember everything that went into making it and I don't really want to look at it again. But my own work that is, now from 10 years ago, I'm ready to go back at it and, rework it and bring it up into something new and exciting.
Wow. Yeah. I see people do that. I see people do like, this was back in 2013. Now look at, the new thing.
The new and improved.
Yeah. Like I want to do that. But when I start the process, I'm like, nah, I don't know. I think that's just something I got to get over. But this has been wonderful, Cynthia. It's super interesting to hear your thoughts and your journey.
Your questions are fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, and your artwork to accompany the whole entire thing has been wonderful to see as well. I want to ask one last question, and that is, you've been through so many different projects or with different teams and all this stuff, met so many different people. If you could thank somebody from your past, somebody that did something for you that was really special or taught you something that was really special, who would that be and what did they do?
Honestly, I think I'm going to thank two people off the top of my head if I can. One would be Paul. Because he happened to be there at a time that was extremely difficult in my life, and he became a personal friend through taking me on professionally. So he he taught me so much, and also just really, was there for me as a friend and a mentor. And the other person would be Will Weston, who has been, he was my teacher at ArtCenter, and he became a very much a professional mentor for me for many years. And, he's just been someone who understood the industry so much, and was a really incredible teacher in many ways, and just managed to sort of see through all of the walls that I was trying to put up, all of the things that I was trying to avoid, and he just turned me around and faced me right at them, and basically made me confront this stuff that I was holding myself back with. So I owe them. I say I owe them a lot, but I also know that both of them would say, you don't owe me anything. That's just what we do, which makes me want to owe them even more. So that's also why I'm teaching now, is because I've had incredible teachers that there's no way for me to repay them. All I can do is pass it forward. So I've become passionate about that.
Wonderful. Well, our true legacies lie in the lives that we touch, not the cool projects that we work on, right? Yeah. So anyhow, I want to thank you, Cynthia. This has been wonderful. Like I said, it's been great just to get to know your backstory a little more. Can't wait to see you at Lightbox, and can't wait to see the next things that you're up to throughout your career.
A ton of fun, and yeah, looking forward to seeing you at Lightbox for sure.